Right, so continuing the discussion of kind of being a differentiated player who's taking on a low-cost rival, there is a strategy called Judo strategy that was popular in the 80s. And it talks about how a small company can take on an incumbent. I'm not trained in Judo, so everything I know about Judo I learned from the research on Judo strategies. So please bear with me. I'm sorry if I offend any Judo practitioners. The idea behind Judo strategy is similar to that in Judo, where the firm that is taking on an incumbent moves into a space. So you go into a space that's being neglected in the market. You figure out your balance, which means understanding your value proposition and your costs and all your processes that are necessary, your value to your customers. And then you use that as leverage, once you find your balance, to enter into another market and a larger market, and then kind of starting to take on the incumbents. An example of this is Lululemon. There were already large athletic companies that produced yoga apparel. However, they were neglecting a particular customer segment, a very kind of high-end performance fabric customer segment. Lululemon entered that space, figured out their value proposition, was very successful in it, figured out their suppliers, they got their balance, and now they've used their success in that space to then leverage into new markets. In this case, they're starting to develop apparel for men and then also for other sports beyond yoga. What if I'm the incumbent though? What if I want to keep upstarts like Lululemon out of my space? Well, it's pretty old school strategy concepts, but you can deter the entry of rivalries by product proliferation, right? By having lots and lots of product in different categories. You can do it by cutting your price so it's a less attractive market to enter. And you can do it by maintaining excess capacity, thus sending a signal that you would be willing to go into a price war if someone enters the space. It's easier to think of this with a little bit more kind of manufacturing viewpoint. If we think about soda pop manufacturers, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, talk about Coca-Cola. One way that they keep upstarts or new companies from entering their space is by having products in almost every single category they can think of. So Coca-Cola has water, it has coconut water, it has teas, and if it misses a category, often these companies acquire a company in that space so they can occupy it. If you look at how they price soda pop, they are willing to do price cuts, right? They often do loss leader pricing at grocery stores. And then if they maintain excess capacity, they're signaling to any large competitors that they will reduce prices if necessary to compete in the market. Right. Okay, so now let's talk about a way that you can do a combination strategy. So remember, if you do both differentiation and a low cost kind of placement in the marketplace, you can get supernormal profits as long as you're successful in maintaining both differentiation and low cost operations. Often this is done through a business model innovation. For example, with Uber, it is differentiated, but it's also lower cost than traditional taxis, but it's done through a technology platform and a business model innovation on who the providers are for the drivers and the vehicles. Another way to do a combination strategy is through using analytics. And so there's an article about competing on analytics that's in the Moodle site. If you are interested in this, you can read more about it. And this article looks specifically about how casinos have used data analytics to improve the differentiation of their offering to their best customers and lower the costs of their offerings to all their customers. I don't know if many of you go to Vegas, but they have loyalty programs. And so they will track not only your hotel spending, but how much you win or lose in the casino. And then they make their kind of extra offerings, lower cost hotel rooms, free show tickets, based on each individual's spending habits. So this article talks about if you are going to bring a data analytics initiative into your company, here are some things that you really need to think about. First, You really need top management team or a senior executive champion to be able to roll it out because it requires an investment and it requires change. You need to make sure that those who are supporting it believe in modeling and optimization because you have to use the data to do projections. You need to do it throughout the company. The difficulty is if it's not throughout the company, it can lose its impact to show its effectiveness. You have to be really careful not to hamper innovation. What do I mean by that? So let's step aside and talk about budgets for a minute. If you've ever worked at a company or an institution like the military where you were given an annual budget, and then if you didn't spend that whole budget or you didn't make it right on budget, you were penalized. Well, that really leads to hampering innovation because then people don't try to save money because they're worried they won't receive the same funding next year. Well, an initiative to collect performance data within the company can also hamper innovation if rewards and evaluation are tied too closely to these performance measures. Obviously, you want to use them, but you don't want to disincentivize people from taking risks and innovating as well. With this initiative, you must have the right focus, right? You must collect the right data, and you must have the correct talent within and external to the company to be able to utilize that data. So most companies end up hiring internally as well as contracting externally to be able to collect and analyze and interpret that data. So data analytics have been used quite a bit for combination strategies. Another example is from Moneyball. So Moneyball, if you've seen the movie or read the book was written by Michael Lewis, and it talks about how the Oakland A's used statistical analysis of players' abilities to field a roster or to hire players who were undervalued in the market. So because they had a lower budget, they used this information to hire undervalued players. It's a very similar thing to that Michael Lewis discusses in Liar's Poker, and how that they can use information to lower the cost of what they're providing and yet differentiate. Okay, so the danger is that these strategies can be imitated, and they have been widely imitated through most professional sports now. There's a scene at the end of the movie where the architect for this, the Oakland A's, the Red Sox are trying to hire him away. And they said, you can either come with us and be successful with us because we're going to do it anyway and we have a bigger budget. He chose not to, but you need to realize that you need to be prepared for when it is imitated. So here's Michael Lewis discussing Moneyball.